The grand hall of Ashford Palace fell silent when Captain Marcus Hale stepped forward. His military boots echoed against the marble floor. Every eye in the room turned toward him. The king's advisor, Lord Pemberton, stood frozen at the podium, his face turning pale. Marcus had served the crown for 17 years. He had protected 3 generations of the royal family. He had never once broken protocol. But today, something burned inside him that was stronger than duty. It was truth. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, his voice steady but loud enough for everyone to hear. "I have something to say." King Edward looked up from his throne. Confusion crossed his weathered face. The gathered nobles whispered among themselves. Lord Pemberton's hand gripped the edge of the podium. "Captain Hale," the advisor said quickly, trying to regain control. "This is not the time for, 'When is the time?'" Marcus interrupted. His question hung in the air like smoke. "When is the time to speak about what everyone in this room knows, but refuses to say?" The whispers stopped. Now there was only silence. Heavy, uncomfortable, real. Marcus had spent the last 3 months watching something happen in the palace. Something wrong? Money meant for orphanages had vanished. Food promised to struggling villages never arrived. Reports were changed. Numbers were adjusted. And every trail led back to one man, Lord Pemberton. But it was more than that. It was the silence around it. The courtiers who looked away. The officials who shrugged their shoulders. The system that protected itself while the people outside the palace walls suffered. King Edward leaned forward on his throne. "Speak plainly, Captain." Marcus felt his heart pounding. He thought of his daughter Clara, who worked as a teacher in the village school. She had told him about children coming to class with empty stomachs, about families losing their homes, about promises that never came true. If you're watching this story and want to hear what happens next, subscribe now, because what Marcus is about to say will change everything in the palace. "Your Majesty," Marcus began, "do you know where the relief funds went? The ones approved 6 months ago for the northern villages." Lord Pemberton's face turned red. "Captain, you are out of line. This is a formal ceremony, not an interrogation." "Answer the question," the king said quietly. The advisor stammered. "The funds were distributed according to protocol, Your Majesty. All documentation is a lie," Marcus said. The words felt like fire leaving his mouth. "I have seen the real records. I have spoken to the village leaders. The money never reached them. Neither did the grain. Neither did the medicine." A noble near the back gasped. Others shifted in their seats. The king's expression darkened. "These are serious accusations," King Edward said slowly. "Yes," Marcus agreed, "and I have proof." From inside his uniform jacket, Marcus pulled out a folded envelope. It was worn from being carried close to his chest for days. Inside were copies of altered documents, witness statements, bank records that didn't match official reports. Lord Pemberton took a step back. "Your Majesty, this man is clearly unstable. The stress of his position has— Do you want to stand in your own shame?" Marcus said, turning to face the advisor directly. His voice was calm but firm. "Or do you want to tell the truth before it buries you?" The question echoed through the hall. Lord Pemberton's mouth opened, but no words came out. His hands trembled. King Edward stood from his throne. The room seemed to hold its breath. "Captain Hale," the king said, "show me everything you have." Asterisk. Marcus walked toward the throne. Each step felt heavier than the last, not from fear. From the weight of what he carried, the weight of truth. He climbed the 3 marble steps and handed the envelope to King Edward. The king's hands were steady as he opened it. His eyes moved across the first page. Then the second. His jaw tightened. "These signatures," the king said quietly. "They are supposed to be mine." "Forged," Marcus confirmed. "Expertly done, but forged." Lord Pemberton tried to speak, but his voice cracked. "Your Majesty, I can explain, then explain," King Edward said without looking up from the papers. His voice was ice. The advisor swallowed hard. Sweat appeared on his forehead. There were ... complications. The original plans needed adjustments. "I was going to inform you once. What?" The king finally looked at him. Once you had stolen enough? Once you thought you were safe? The nobles in the hall began murmuring again. Some looked shocked. Others looked angry. A few looked guilty, as if they had suspected something all along, but said nothing. Marcus remained standing near the throne. His uniform felt tight across his chest. He had crossed a line today. There was no going back. Either he would be vindicated, or he would be branded a traitor. There was no middle ground, Captain Hale, the king said, still reading through the documents. How long have you known about this? 3 months, Your Majesty. Why did you not come to me sooner? Marcus hesitated. This was the question he had dreaded. The truth was complicated, messy, human. I was afraid, Marcus said simply. The hall went quiet again. A royal guard admitting fear? It was unheard of. Afraid of what? The king asked. That I was wrong, Marcus said. That I would destroy a man's reputation over a mistake. That I would cause chaos over suspicion. He paused. And afraid that even if I was right, nothing would change. King Edward looked at him for a long moment. Something passed between them? Understanding? Respect? What changed? The king asked. Yesterday, Marcus said, a boy died in the northern village of Millbrook. He was 8 years old. His name was Thomas. He died from a fever that could have been treated with medicine. Medicine that was supposed to arrive 4 months ago. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He pushed through it. His mother came to the palace gates yesterday morning. She stood there for 3 hours, begging to speak to someone. Anyone. The guards turned her away. They said she had no appointment. No right to disturb the palace. The king's face grew darker with every word. I was on duty at the east gate, Marcus continued. I heard her crying. I went to her. She showed me the burial notice. She told me about the promised supplies that never came. She asked me one question. Marcus looked directly at Lord Pemberton. She asked me, does the king know that we are dying while his palace shines? Several nobles looked down at their feet. One woman near the front had tears in her eyes. I could not answer her, Marcus said, because I did not know if you knew, Your Majesty. I did not know if anyone in this palace cared enough to look beyond these walls. King Edward set the papers down on his throne. He stood slowly. The weight of his crown seemed heavier than usual. Lord Pemberton, the king said, you will be taken into custody immediately. These documents will be reviewed by the royal magistrate. If what Captain Hale says is proven true, you will face full justice. 2 guards moved forward. Lord Pemberton's face went white. Your Majesty, please, you can remain silent, the king said. You have done enough damage with your words. The guards escorted Lord Pemberton from the hall. His fancy robes dragged behind him. His head was down. The man who had walked with such confidence minutes ago now looked small, broken. King Edward turned to face the assembled nobles. This ends today, he said. All of it. The closed doors. The ignored cries. The distance between this palace and the people we serve. He looked at Marcus. Captain Hale, you asked when the time was to speak truth? The answer is always, the time is always now. The next morning came quietly. Too quietly. Marcus stood at his usual post by the east gate, but everything felt different. Word had spread through the palace like wildfire. The captain who spoke against a lord, the guard who broke the silence. Some servants nodded at him with respect as they passed. Others looked away, afraid to be associated with trouble. Marcus understood both reactions. He had been in their position once, many years ago. At noon, a royal messenger approached. Captain Hale, the king requests your presence in the private study. Marcus followed the messenger through corridors he had walked 1,000 times. But today they felt unfamiliar, uncertain. He did not know if he was being summoned for gratitude or punishment. In the palace, both could look the same. The study door opened. King Edward sat behind a heavy oak desk covered with papers. He looked tired. Older than yesterday. The crown was absent from his head. Without it, he looked more human, more real. Sit, the king said, gesturing to a chair across from him. Marcus sat. He kept his back straight out of habit. "I did not sleep last night," King Edward said. "I spent the hours reading every document you provided. Then I sent investigators to verify the claims. They returned an hour ago." The king pushed a report across the desk. Marcus glanced at it. "Everything you said was true," the king continued, "and worse. There are 6 other officials involved. The corruption runs deeper than one man. It is a system. A culture." Marcus said nothing. He had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed still hurt. "I am angry, Captain," the king said, "but not at you. I am angry at myself." This surprised Marcus. Kings rarely admitted fault. "I have been comfortable," King Edward said. "Comfortable in my routines. Comfortable with my advisors. Comfortable in the belief that if something was truly wrong, someone would tell me." He looked directly at Marcus. "But you are the only one who did." "Your Majesty, let me finish," the king interrupted gently. "I have been thinking about your question yesterday, about when the time is to speak truth, and I realized something. The reason no one speaks is because they are afraid of people like me." Marcus frowned slightly. "I have created a palace where truth is dangerous," the king explained. "Where speaking out means risking your position, your safety, your future. I did not mean to do this. But intention does not matter when the result is silence." The king stood and walked to the window. Outside, the palace gardens stretched endlessly. Beautiful, perfect, separate from the world beyond. "Do you know what I saw from my window this morning?" the king asked. "I saw my gardeners trimming roses. I saw my kitchen staff preparing meals. I saw my guards standing at their posts, and I realized that I do not know any of their names. I do not know their families. I do not know their struggles." He turned back to Marcus. "How did I become so distant?" Marcus thought carefully before answering. "Your Majesty, distance is not built in a day. It grows slowly. One closed door at a time. One unanswered question at a time. One person turned away at the gate at a time." The king nodded slowly. "Yes, that is exactly right." He returned to his desk and sat down heavily. "Captain Hale, I am making you the new chief of the Royal Guard, effective immediately. Your first task is to investigate every department in this palace. Every fund. Every promise. Every piece of paper that leaves this building with my seal on it. I want to know the truth of what we have become." Marcus felt the weight of the responsibility settle on his shoulders. "There's more," the king said. "I am opening the palace gates. One day each week, any citizen may request an audience with me. No appointment, no approval from advisors. Just a person and their truth." "Your Majesty, the security risks are acceptable," the king finished. "Because the risk of staying isolated is greater. I would rather face an honest enemy than live surrounded by comfortable lies," Marquess understood. This was not just about fixing corruption. It was about changing the heart of the kingdom itself. "There will be resistance," Marcus said. "From everyone," the king agreed. "The nobles will hate losing their exclusive access. The advisors will fight to maintain control. Even some of the staff will resist change because they are used to the old ways." He looked at Marcus with something like hope in his eyes. "But you resisted yesterday. You spoke when silence was easier. If you can do it, perhaps others can too." "I will do everything I can, Your Majesty." "I know you will," the king said. "That is why I am trusting you." 3 weeks passed. The palace transformed, but not easily. Change never came easily. Marcus stood in the main courtyard overseeing the new security arrangements. Today was the first open audience day. Citizens were already forming a line outside the gates. Some had traveled for days to be here. They carried letters, documents, pictures of loved ones. Hope mixed with desperation. "This is madness," said Lieutenant Collins, one of the senior guards. "We cannot possibly secure all these people. We secure them by treating them with respect," Marcus replied. "Not as threats, as citizens." Collins shook his head but said nothing more. Many of the old guards felt the same way. They preferred the old system, the predictable system, the safe system. But Marcus had learned something in the past 3 weeks. Safety built on silence was no safety at all. It was just comfortable ignorance. The first citizen to enter was an elderly woman named Mrs. Whitmore. She walked slowly, leaning on a cane. Her hands shook as she approached the throne room. Marcus walked beside her, matching her pace. "I have never been inside a palace," she whispered. "It is so big." "It is just a building," Marcus said gently. "And today, it belongs to you as much as anyone." Tears formed in her eyes. King Edward received her personally. No advisors between them. No protocol officers managing the conversation. Just two people talking. Mrs. Whitmore told him about her grandson, about how he had been conscripted into the Royal Labor Force 3 years ago and never returned, about how no one would tell her what happened to him, about how she had written letters that were never answered. The king listened, truly listened. When she finished, he did not make excuses. He did not explain why the system had failed. He simply said, "I am sorry. I will find out what happened to your grandson." "You have my word?" she cried. The king stood and helped her to her feet. He walked her personally to the door. One by one, citizens came forward. A farmer whose land had been seized incorrectly. A widow whose pension had stopped without explanation. A young man who had been imprisoned for a crime he did not commit and released only when someone finally looked at the evidence. Each story was a wound. Each person was a reminder of how far the palace had drifted from the people it served by the end of the day. Marcus was exhausted, not from standing, from feeling, from hearing, from understanding the true cost of the palace's comfort. That evening, he returned home to his small house outside the palace grounds. His daughter Clara was waiting for him with dinner already prepared. "You look terrible," she said. Hugging him was a long day, Marcus replied. Sitting at their small wooden table, Clara brought him soup. Simple, warm, real. "The whole village is talking about what you did," she said. "Some people are calling you a hero. Others say you are a fool who will get yourself killed. What do you say?" Marcus asked. Clara sat across from him. She looked so much like her mother, who had passed away 5 years ago. The same strong eyes, the same honest heart. "Shh. I say you are my father," Clara said, "and I have never been more proud." Marcus felt something break inside him. Not in a bad way. In a way that releases pressure, a way that allows feeling to return to places that had gone numb. "I was scared," he admitted. "I am still scared. I do not know if what I did will change anything. I do not know if it will last." "Does that matter?" Clara asked. "What do you mean?" "You spoke the truth when no one else would," she said. "You gave those people today a chance to be heard. Even if everything goes back to the way it was tomorrow, that moment happened. That mattered." Marcus looked at his daughter. When had she become so wise? "Your mother would have said the same thing," he said quietly. "I know," Clara smiled. "She taught me." They ate together in comfortable silence. Outside, the sun set over the village. Lights appeared in windows. Smoke rose from chimneys. Life continued, small and real and beautiful. The next morning, Marcus returned to the palace. As he approached, he saw something unexpected. A crowd had gathered outside the gates. Not citizens seeking an audience. Palace staff. Dozens of them. They stood holding signs. Simple words. "We stand with Captain Hale. Truth over comfort. Change is possible." Marcus stopped walking. His throat tightened. A young kitchen maid stepped forward. "Sir, we wanted you to know. You are not alone." Behind her, others nodded. A gardener. A stable hand. A seamstress. People who kept the palace running, but were never seen. Never heard. "We have stories too," the maid continued. "Things we have seen. Things we were told to ignore. We want to help make this place better." Marcus looked at the faces around him. Young and old. Nervous, but determined. Afraid, but hopeful. "And we do it together," Marcus said. For the first time in 3 weeks. He felt like maybe, just maybe, real change was possible. Change brought enemies. Marcus learned this quickly. Not all opposition came from corrupt officials. Some came from people who genuinely believed the old way was better, safer, more stable. They saw Marcus not as a reformer but as a destroyer of order. Lord Chancellor Hayes was one of them. He was not corrupt like Pemberton. He was simply traditional, conservative, afraid of chaos. "Captain Hale," Hayes said one afternoon, cornering Marcus in the palace library. "We must speak." Marcus turned from the shelf he was examining. Investigation had become his life now. Every document, every record, every claim. "Lord Hayes, this experiment," Hayes said carefully, "is unsustainable. The king has opened the palace to anyone with a complaint. Do you know how many requests we have received? Thousands. We cannot possibly address them all." "Then we work harder," Marcus said simply. "It is not about working harder," Hayes insisted. "It is about reality. The kingdom is vast. Problems are endless. We must prioritize. We must maintain order." "Whose order?" Marcus asked. "The order that let children die? The order that stole from the poor? That order?" Hayes's face reddened. "That is not fair. One man's corruption does not condemn an entire system." "You are right," Marcus agreed. "It was not one man. The investigation has found 6 others so far. And more concerning than the corrupt ones are the honest ones who saw it happening and said nothing." Hayes looked away. The words had struck close. "I said nothing," Hayes admitted quietly. "I suspected. But I told myself it was not my place. That someone else would handle it. That my job was to maintain stability." Marcus set down the book he was holding. "Lord Hayes, may I tell you about a woman I met yesterday?" Hayes nodded reluctantly. "Her name is Sarah. She is 19 years old. 5 years ago, when she was 14, she witnessed officials taking grain meant for her village. She told her father. Her father reported it to the local magistrate. The magistrate dismissed the claim. Her father tried again, and again. Finally, he traveled to the capital to report it directly to the palace." Marcus paused, never made it home. "His body was found in a ditch 2 miles from here. The official report said he fell from his horse, but Sarah knows better. She has known for 5 years. And she has lived in fear that if she speaks about it, she will end up the same way." Hayes had gone pale. I did not know." "No one knew," Marcus said. "Because the system you are defending killed him quietly, professionally, and called it an accident." The library fell silent, except for the ticking of a clock on the wall.
"Oh, what do you want from me?"
Hayes asked finally. "Help us," Marcus said. "You know how this palace works. You know where the bodies are buried, literally and figuratively. Help us find the truth. Help us build something better." Hayes was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "I have served the crown for 32 years. I always believed I was doing good, that I was maintaining civilization against chaos. But lately, I wonder if I was just maintaining my own comfort." "It is never too late," Marcus said. Hayes looked at him with tired eyes. "Is that true? Or is that just something we tell ourselves to feel better about wasted years?" "I do not know," Marcus admitted. "But I know that doing nothing guarantees nothing changes." Hayes nodded slowly. "Where do we start?" Over the next month, Hayes became one of Marcus's strongest allies. He opened sealed archives. He identified which officials could be trusted and which could not. He used his decades of experience to navigate the palaces. Complex politics, but not everyone could be won over, lady. Victoria Ashton was one of the most influential nobles in the kingdom. She controlled vast estates and had the ear of dozens of powerful families. She did not like the new direction. She made her opposition public at a noble council meeting. "The king has lost his mind," she declared. "Opening the palace to peasants. Arresting lords without proper trials. Dismantling centuries of tradition based on the word of a single guard." Other nobles murmured agreement. "Captain Hale," she said, turning to where Marcus stood observing the meeting, "you have poisoned the king's mind with your radical ideas. You are destroying this kingdom from within." Marcus remained calm. He had learned that angry responses only proved his opponent's points. "Lady Ashton," he said evenly, "what am I destroying? Corruption, theft, the abuse of power? You are destroying order," she shot back. "You are giving false hope to people who do not understand how kingdoms function. You are creating expectations that cannot be met." Marcus asked. "Because resources are limited," Lady Ashton said as if explaining to a child. "Because problems are complex. Because the world is unfair and always has been. Your idealism will lead to disappointment and resentment. It will destabilize everything." "Then let it," King Edward said, entering the chamber. Everyone stood. The king rarely attended noble council meetings. His presence now was significant. "Your Majesty," Lady Ashton said. "I did not mean you meant exactly what you said," the king interrupted. "And you are not wrong. Change is destabilizing. Reform is uncomfortable. Justice demands sacrifice." He walked to the center of the room. "But I have realized something these past weeks. Stability built on injustice is not stability. It is just delayed collapse. And when it falls harder." He looked around at the assembled nobles. "Captain Hale did not poison my mind. He opened my eyes. And if that makes me a bad king by your standards, then perhaps your standards need to change." 6 months had passed since Marcus spoke in the Grand Hall. The palace looked the same from the outside, but inside, everything had changed. The investigation had identified corruption in 12 departments. 9 officials had been arrested. 4 had fled the kingdom. Millions in stolen funds had been recovered and redistributed to the communities that had been robbed. But the deeper change was harder to measure. Citizens no longer feared approaching the palace. The weekly audience days were full every week. Not just with complaints, but with ideas, suggestions, offers to help. A farmer had proposed a new irrigation system that could double crop yields. A teacher had designed a literacy program for remote villages. A former soldier had identified weaknesses in the kingdom's defense that everyone had been too afraid to mention. The kingdom was waking up. Marcus walked through the palace. Gardens one evening, after a long day. The roses were in bloom. Their scent filled the air. For the first time in months, he felt something close to peace. "Captain Hale," he turned. King Edward approached, dressed simply. No crown, no royal robes. "Just a man taking a walk, Your Majesty," Marcus said, starting to bow. "Please," the king said, waving him off. "We are past that when we are alone." They walked together in silence for a moment. "I received a letter today," the king said finally, "from Mrs. Whitmore. Do you remember her? The woman looking for her grandson?" Marcus said immediately. "We found him," the king said. "He is alive." He had been working in the eastern quarries under a forged labor contract. The officials there kept him working even after his term ended because they needed the labor. Right. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. How long was he there? 5 years, the king said quietly. 5 years beyond his original term. He is being brought home tomorrow. He stopped walking. The king looked older in the fading light, wearier, but also more alive somehow. "That letter," the king continued, "was the most important thing I have read in my entire reign. She thanked me. Not for being a good king, but for being a decent human being, for caring when I did not have to." He turned to Marcus. "Do you know what I realized? For 20 years, I have been trying to be a great king, building monuments, winning battles, expanding borders, all the things history remembers, but I forgot the simplest thing. To be good." Marcus did not know what to say. "You reminded me," the king said. "When you stood up in that hall and asked that question, 'Do you want to stand in your own shame?' That question saved me. It saved this kingdom." "I was terrified," Marcus admitted. "I almost did not speak." "But you did," the king said. "That is what matters." "You did?" They resumed walking. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. "There is something I want to tell you," the king said. "Something I have not told anyone else." Marcus waited. "In 3 months, I am announcing a new position. Royal Advocate. Someone who represents the people directly to the crown. Someone with the authority to investigate, to question, to challenge. Someone who cannot be fired or silenced by anyone except the king himself. He stopped and looked at Marcus directly. I want it to be you. Marcus felt his breath catch. Your Majesty, I am a soldier. Not a you are exactly what this position needs, the king interrupted. Someone who will speak truth even when it is hard. Someone who understands both the palace and the people outside it. Someone the citizens will trust. There are others more qualified, Marcus protested. Perhaps the king agreed. But there is no one I trust more. Marcus looked out at the gardens. At the palace? At the life he had known for 17 years? This new role would change everything again. More responsibility. More danger. More pressure. But he thought about Mrs. Whitmore reuniting with her grandson. About Sarah finally feeling safe enough to tell her story. About all the people who had been invisible finally being seen. I accept, Marcus said. The king smiled. It was genuine. Warm. Real. Good, he said. Because I already told Lord Hayes, and he has been planning the announcement ceremony for 2 weeks. Marcus laughed despite himself. You were very confident in my answer. No, the king said. I was confident in you. They walked back toward the palace together. The lights were coming on in the windows. Inside, staff were preparing dinner. Guards were changing shifts. Life continued in its endless rhythm, but something fundamental had shifted. The palace was no longer a fortress keeping people out. It was becoming what it should have been all along, a place of service, of justice, of connection. Marcus thought about his daughter Clara, about what he would tell her tonight. She would be proud, maybe a little worried, but proud. As they reached the palace entrance, the king paused. Captain Hale, may I ask you something? Of course, at day in the hall, when you stepped forward, when you spoke, what were you thinking in that exact moment? Marcus remembered it clearly. The pounding heart, the dry mouth, the fear. I was thinking about a promise I made to my wife before she died, Marcus said quietly. She told me that silence in the face of wrong is the same as agreement. That good people staying quiet is how evil wins. She made me promise that I would never be silent when it mattered. The king nodded slowly. She sounds like she was a remarkable woman. She was, Marcus agreed. She would have liked what we are doing here, and we do it for her, the king said. And for everyone else who believed that things could be better. They entered the palace together. Behind them, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. New opposition, new struggles. But tonight, in this moment, there was hope, and hope, Marcus had learned, was the most powerful thing of all.